Well, let's go to Brussels now, because that's where the Prime Minister has been facing his fellow European leaders for the first time since that vote last week, the vote for the UK to leave the EU. And I can join my colleague Christian Fraser, who's there. Christian.
Simon, thank you very much. Yes, the Prime Minister is sitting down face to face with the other European leaders for the first time, of course, since the referendum vote on Thursday. And tonight they'll sit down for dinner and talk specifically about Brexit. And it might well be an uncomfortable dinner for him, because there will be frustration in the room. Back in February, he convinced many of them that he could win this referendum on the renegotiation he'd secured. But of course, that's not the way it's turned out. And I dare say there might not be an awful lot of polite dinner conversation. We shall see. Well, I'm very pleased to say that the UKIP leader, Nigel Farage, has joined me after your fun and games in the European Parliament this morning. You seem to enjoy yourself. I mean, some might ask whether it's the right approach to take them on head on when we're looking for a constructive negotiation.
Well, my argument was, let's be grown up. Let's recognise that trade between each of us really matters. But ultimately, if you decide to cut off your noses to spite your faces, it'll hurt you more than it will hurt us. I was attempting to have a serious conversation. I just happened to be the pantomime villain of the day. A lot of people there very upset about Brexit because they want to build a United States of Europe. And what I saw today convinced me that the referendum result was the right one.
You were just saying to me off camera, you think they're more worried than they're actually showing here.
They're very worried, and the worry is not the UK. The worry is that in Denmark, the Netherlands and other countries around Europe, suddenly the opinion polls say that referendums there on staying members of the Union look like 50-50. So there is a feeling tonight in Brussels that maybe the project is about to collapse.
Would you accept that on the Leave side there's been a certain amount of drift in the last 2 or 3 days? I mean, you were out banging the drum, but we've not seen much of Boris Johnson or Michael Gove. England lost last night, so the English electorate is a bit down in the mouth. Generally, there is a sense of depression descending across the country.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but I rather agreed with what Mr. Juncker said this morning, the European Commission President. He said, look, you voted to leave. I disagree with it. I don't like it, but I respect democratic decisions. So let's get on and implement it. And actually, that's right. Because if we're going to wait for a successor to David Cameron, further thinking, and we're not going to invoke Article 50 or start the serious renegotiation of our trade relationship until later on this year, actually that is a period of indecision, and that can't be good for anybody. So I'm now of the view that we should trigger Article 50. Let's get cracking. Let's change our relationship with Europe, not being members of a political union, but having a sensible trade deal and being good next door neighbours.
The problem for many on the Remain side and people here in Europe is that everyone's talking about having their cake and eat it. Boris Johnson's talking about the single market and not having freedom of movement. You're talking about a free trade agreement and no freedom of movement. How are we going to get around that when they're adamant that if you want these accesses to the European market, you've got to play by the rules?
Well, let's get one thing clear. We keep being told, as we were in the referendum campaign, about access to the single market. You know, you can't have access to the single market, we're told, without free movement or without paying contributions. Rubbish. Every single country in the world has access to the single market. The question is, what are those terms of access? Now, 40 years ago, my parents' generation voted to stay part of a common market, which gave us tariff-free access to the European market in a world of high tariffs, a world of big barriers. Because of globalisation, because of change over 40 years, those tariffs are now so small that our costs of membership outweigh any benefits we get from it. We'd be better off with no deal at all, and World Trade Organization rules. What I try to argue this morning in the European Parliament is that unless we have a sensible deal, a sensible, simple free trade agreement between us, there are hundreds of thousands of German car workers that might lose their jobs.
But you're talking about a sort of system like we're a Singapore outside Europe with low corporate tax rates, with all the benefits of free trade, but none of the rules that apply to the rest, and they're just not going to allow us to do that.
Well, the point about free trade, as opposed to membership of this political customs union, is when you trade freely with each other, that's what you do. You just remove tariff barriers, you don't do anything else. And that's what I want our relationship to be with the European Union. And they may huff and puff a bit to begin with, but they'll recognise one thing. We are the Eurozone's biggest trading partner in the world. They sell us £70 billion of the goods every year, more than we sell them. And there's a German general election next year. If the German car industry thinks it's about to lose 500,000 jobs, Mrs. Merkel will lose. In the end, economic pragmatism and tough negotiation can win us the right relationship.
Okay, just a final question on Jeremy Corbyn. Only has the support of 40 of his MPs. Doesn't look as if he's going to be going anywhere because the membership is on his side. Is that a problem for the negotiation as a whole? It needs to be cross-party, doesn't it?
Well, I would like the negotiations to be cross-party, although the indications from Vote Leave and the Conservatives are that they'd rather do it themselves. I think there are three Labour parties. There's a parliamentary Labour Party, which is Blairite Social Democratic. There's a Labour Party membership, which is Corbynite, and half their voters are more UKIP than Labour. They're in a terrible mess.
You seem to be saying goodbye to the European Parliament today. You put your flat up for rent.
Well, I will only engage here, between now and us finally leaving, when there is something I can say in that Parliament that directly affects our negotiations. So, yeah, I'm on a wind down.
Okay. Nigel Farage, thanks for joining us.